We are thrilled to have you join the Co-Sponsorship in Practice Refugee Newcomer Feedback FY23 report webinar today. Your presence is invaluable as we explore the insight and experiences of our refugee newcomers. So therefore, let's embark on this journey together and delve into the impactful stories and valuable feedback that shape our co-sponsorship efforts. So on the next slide is the agenda for this event. We'll go over the welcome and introduction. We'll present the overview of the Refugee Feedback Project. We'll take a dive into the report. There'll be a Q&A and a chance for you to complete a feedback for our future work, and then there'll be a closing. I'm excited today to be presenting this alongside my colleague, Jessica Ashcraft, who is the Senior Program Officer for Community Sponsorship at RWC. And my name is Jafet Ajani. I'm the Associate Director for Resources and Learning at RWC. The next slide is where I'm going to talk about the overview of this report. So again, I'm excited to share that we have completed the Refugee Feedback Project titled Co-Sponsorship in Practice, Refugee Newcomer Feedback, FY23. This feedback project is a pilot project of the Refugee Welcome Collective. In addition to the goals, which I'm going to share with you very shortly, the intention is to model a refugee feedback project and learn how newly resettled refugees are faring in their community and how co-sponsorship has helped them build a new life. So again, I will share the overview now. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, here it is. For this report, can you move to the next slide, I guess? So we have, this report used 15 refugee newcomers who had been resettled in the US within the last 12 months through co-sponsorship. We have, as part of our methodology, we have survey and qualitative interviews. So we had a total of 45 minutes for both surveys and qualitative interviews. We had 35 minutes for the qualitative interview piece, and we had 10 minutes for the survey. The surveys were designed in jot form, and all this was administered via phone call through our partner, through Communication Essentials LLC, who helped us to collect this data. So we used the qualitative analysis, which is a centerpiece of this work. It used the interpretive phenomenological analysis, otherwise known as IPA, for the qualitative research. And then the IPA explores how individuals make sense of their experiences and how people also make sense of what happens to them during a particular time. So the qualitative section used the coding system to identify commonalities and data points. And for the quantitative data and the analysis, we used Microsoft Excel for that. On the next slide, I'll discuss the context for this work. One main goal that we identified is to understand if the new and expanded co-sponsorship programs deepen refugees' connection to community members and local resources through co-sponsorship. So following the research objectives and priorities of the RWC in collecting refugee feedback in fiscal year FY23, this project was conducted by us, and we used Communication Essentials to get the data and the report. This project was guided by indicators identified by RWC, and these indicators are part of the RWC 3-year capacity building project funded by PRM. So I'll run you through the 3 indicators. The first one is to measure the percentage of paired refugee respondents to report likely to recommend participating in co-sponsorship programs. The second indicator is to measure the percentage of paired refugee respondents to report they visited places in their locality with sponsors, such as stores, parks, or doctors' offices, and to also indicate increased community connection. The third and last indicator was to measure the percentage of peer refugee respondents to report that their co-sponsor connected them with ongoing local community resources such as employment, transportation, or English language opportunities, thereby indicating an ongoing connection. Another context was from our baseline survey, which was conducted in December 2022. And this baseline survey was completed by the national and local area staff to understand the work model of community sponsorship programs, agency structure, among others, other factors that we try to understand. Two questions on the baseline survey stood out. And the first question, as you can see on your screen, was to ask if participants collected feedback from sponsors on their experience in the sponsorship program. You could see that of the 73 respondents, 56 of them answered in the affirmative, while 13 and 4 had no response, respectively. And what does this tell us? This tells us that data on sponsors are largely collected at the end of sponsorship programs. Conversely, the second question asked, and this perhaps is one significant motivation for this project. It asked if participants collected feedback from client, that is the refugee newcomers in the sponsorship program. Again, we had 73 respondents. The result was close. You could see that we had 37 yeses, we had 32 no's, and we had 4 no responses. And then what does this tell us? This tells us that work needs to be done in collecting refugee feedback to better learn and understand program successes and certain areas where work is needed. The last motivation was from the RWC membership meeting, which was held in June 2023, and that will be on the next slide. There were some concerns that were raised at this meeting, and I would like to point you through a number of them. Some of them said they've been trying to collect feedback from refugees and they are struggling. So they are trying to identify who is going to be the best person to collect this feedback. And they are also worried that this might affect ongoing services that they are performing. Another one says they can collect co-sponsorship, this feedback, they can collect this feedback over the phone, but they do not know when an exact time to collect it. Is it going to be pre or post program? So, and then those were the context for this report. So right now we'll take a pause and then hand it over to my colleague Jessica, who will walk you through a dive into the report. So I do want to say that at the end of the presentation, we have time for Q&A and to get your survey and feedback as well. Please prepare your questions, and I will hand it over to Jessica Ashcraft now. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Japhet, for some of that context. So we're going to take a deeper dive into the report by looking at 3 main areas. First, the identified benefits of community sponsorship. Second, some lessons learned. And lastly, some of the ongoing challenges that were made clear as a result of the respondents. So let's dive into the identified benefits. So the first identified benefit was, as you can see, an overwhelming recommendation for community sponsorship programs. A question asked, would you recommend a community sponsorship program? And 87% of respondents indicated yes. Just to dive a little bit deeper into that, some of the remarks from the participants that supported their desire for recommending community sponsorship included a few direct quotes. First, quote, "I would. They treated us well." Second, quote, all they did was good. They are like our friends now. And then two anecdotal supports that were mentioned when this question was asked. First, sponsors who organized a trip to the aquarium for a newcomer child's birthday. And the other sponsors who assisted with a visit to a medical institution that specialized in a newcomer child's special needs. Next slide. The second benefit identified was that sponsors support newcomers by visiting key places that aid in their resettlement to new communities. So a question inquired if the newcomer and their co-sponsors had visited some of these places you can see on your screen now together. And then the responses from most common to least common, most common 100% the grocery store, 93% the doctor's office, 73% schools, 53% community parks, 40% places of worship, 13% the local library. And then you can see a really significant percentage, 48% of respondents saying there were other key places that their co-sponsors took them that really aided into their resettlement and welcome in their new communities. Next slide. The third benefit identified was that sponsors connected newcomers with ongoing local community resources. So question asked if the sponsors connected newcomers to certain resources, providing specific options, again, shown on your screen. And again, from most common to least common, 100% connecting them with ongoing transportation support, 66% English language learning opportunities, 60% housing, 40% employment, and again, really noteworthy, almost half of respondents, 47%, saying there were other ongoing local community resources that their sponsors helped them get connected to. And the fourth benefit is good welcoming. Newcomers believe the most effective welcome is when refugees are welcomed by both resettlement agencies and community sponsors. So here, participants were asked their opinion on what is the optimal method of welcoming refugees. And among the choices of having either only the resettlement agency working with new arrivals, having only community sponsors be a part of that welcome, or having both entities involved. And 80% said both sponsors and RAs should welcome refugees, 20% saying only the community sponsors should welcome refugees, and actually none indicating that welcoming was only for RAs. Now, I should note that 100% of participants believe that community sponsorship should be involved either as sole actors or in tandem or in collaboration with local resettlement agencies. And this is an opinion that was shared even by participants who would not recommend the program to others or who marked negative experiences of the program. And I'll kind of talk about some of those later. And then none of the participants, as I said, wanted only RAs to welcome them. And this to us is an indication that community sponsorship works, that the collaboration is really essential in welcoming newcomers. So the next section, as I mentioned, is going to focus on some lessons learned from the project. The first lesson learned was that the community sponsorship program is largely viewed by participants as a positive resource for refugees, despite some, again, negative experiences that I'll give some examples of later. Sponsorship is perceived as an activity that positively impacts the community connection of refugees who are being resettled. All participants agree and recognize the positive impact of sponsors and their activities, even when they went on to identify challenges or issues. Even with all participants agreeing on community sponsorship as being a preferred component to welcome new arrivals, they also identified several areas of opportunities that would improve the experience for other refugees who will be paired with sponsors later. And I'll share some of those recommendations in a moment. So community sponsorship programs promote great community connection for refugee newcomers. The second lesson learned was that communication is crucial. Clear communication should include realistic and collaborative setting of expectations, priorities, and goals that directly impact the roles and responsibilities of all key stakeholders involved in community sponsorship programs. This communication then allows for important adaptation or tweaking of activities and resources to each newcomer's needs. Identification and connection to effective language access can also facilitate, of course, better communication. And the last lesson learned was that more support is needed for sponsors. Some examples include how to greet at the airport, trauma-informed care, and cultural awareness training, and a clear delineation of roles. Overall, the areas for improvement that this project has helped expose include more support to sponsors from RAs themselves, training sponsors on core services and boundaries, greater understanding of the refugees' goals and priorities, clearer roles and responsibilities for all stakeholders in the process. And it's important to note that any training on these include cultural orientation and trauma-informed care. Refugee Welcome Collective is the technical assistance project funded by PRM in order to support capacity growth through community sponsorship. So we play a key role in this support for sponsors, and we continue to try and lead the path in supporting everyone involved in helping refugees build their new lives. This feedback project is one of the ways we can understand how we can provide support. And I'm going to mention a few of the training and program supports we have or are currently developing that link back to some of the identified needs. So first, Welcome Works, which is a free online tool that helps community sponsors and community sponsorship staff track important community sponsorship activities. Community sponsorship manual that does include an adaptable format, excuse me. This manual includes everything from sample shared principles to group role explainers to committee guides to fundraising tips. Also Ready, Set, Launch, which is a free online training that provides local and national resettlement staff with a variety of tools and resources needed to set up, manage, and evaluate community sponsorship programs. A state resource map and the information provided on that map was developed by both resettlement staff and healthcare experts knowledgeable about the services and benefits in the particular states where they work. And then just two upcoming supports to mention because they directly relate to some of the needs identified. By the end of next month, at the end of February, we'll have two upcoming free self-paced online trainings for sponsors, one on setting boundaries and expectations, and one on promoting newcomer autonomy and self-sufficiency. All right, the next section that we'll look at are some of the challenges that were identified in the report. First, next slide, sorry. The first challenge we learned in this project was that the majority of sponsors from the perception of the respondents did not fully understand their role. When asked if sponsors understood their role, respondents said 20% said, yes, we think they did, 60% no, and 20% did not directly answer. And you can see on your screen some further detail in those responses. This result means that there should be support for sponsors to better understand both their roles and responsibilities, but also their limitations within those roles. Next slide. Another challenge was that most of the sponsors were perceived as not understanding the goals and priorities of the newcomers. When asked about this, results showed only 27% indicated yes, 60% indicated no, they felt their goals and priorities were not understood, and 13% did not directly answer. It's worth noting with this one that some newcomers actually identified that the sponsor set goals and expectations were perceived as promises. So then they felt their sponsors did not fulfill those promises when the goals and expectations set were not achievable, either because of the duration of the program or the limitations of the community sponsorship program. In the next slide, I'm going to kind of spotlight some of those negative experiences that I mentioned, which do include a couple examples of suggested opportunities for change in the program to better the experience of future refugees who might participate. So first, regarding training, quote, they should give more training to the volunteers, sponsors. They did everything they could, but they needed more support. With respect to housing and other support, quote, they are super helpful, but what I wish for is finding a good house. Organizations find housing that is not good, and I wish my team will advocate for me and my family. The organizations typically don't have time for you, and they may visit you every now and then, but the welcome team is always there for you. Regarding role distinction or responsibility delineation, quote, it will be great to know what the team is responsible for so we don't ask them for things that are outside of their scope of work. We don't want to embarrass them. The team did not know anything about important dates in the resettlement process. On airport welcome, quote, it would be nice for them to have the refugee newcomers country or other identification or some distinctive thing when they welcomed us at the airport so we could identify them easily. And on pre-arrival planning, and this one I find especially important, quote, to have someone trained and prepared who spoke our language. It would have facilitated communication. They should have been prepared for our specific case as they actually triggered a trauma response in my children when they, a bunch of strangers speaking an unknown language, physically approached them, hugged them, and touched their heads. They should have been aware of our trauma or acted in a trauma-informed manner instead of triggering it. That's kind of a little bit of an overview, a deep dive into the report itself, and I'm going to pass this back to Japhet to conclude us and get us started on the Q&A section.
Thank you, Jessica, for that deep dive indeed. So I do want to reintroduce RWC to those who do not know what we do and who we are. The RWC is a technical assistance and capacity building project of the Church World Service under an agreement paid for by the United States Department of State's Bureau of Population, Refugees, and Migration. So just to conclude this, we've been able to see that the community sponsorship program is widely viewed by participants as a positive source for refugees, positive resource for refugees. And at present, it is an impactful and valuable tool for refugees who wish to integrate into their new community and has the potential to greatly improve and offer a more consistently positive experience to each arrival that goes through the program. More support is needed for sponsors, and as Jessica Ashkar mentioned, the RWC is here to help with that, and we are always here to provide support whenever you need them. So right now, we'd like to take some questions. So while we're at it, and this is on the next slide, while we're at that point in this presentation, we ask that you take a moment right now to complete the survey for this session. The link has been put in the chat, and also you can use your phone to scan the QR code on the screen. We would like to hear from you and receive your feedback on today's presentation. And more importantly, we welcome your suggestions on topics you would find useful for future refugee feedback community sponsorship projects. So I want to thank you for taking the next few minutes to complete the survey. Now, let us take your questions if we have them coming. Thank you. And I'm sure that
Hello.
people... Okay, yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, hi. My name is Pamela Scott, and I'm trying to help with my team, private citizen, help to bring him from Haiti because of all the government problems down there. He lives in Port-au-Prince. He's constantly at threat of being hurt by the gangs down there. And I applied for him a long time ago, and I have tried to get updates on it. And I do appreciate the information that you shared today, but doing this, you know, it keeps getting delayed, and it's been almost a year now. And I'm just in place. Everybody's ready. And I'm just a little frustrated that I cannot get any answers from the program as to when, I don't know if it's just strictly Haitians or what's going on with that.
I can drop my email in the chat and try the right answers.
don't know if I can pick the chat
Sure.
up. I'm on my phone right now because get this transferred to my computer.
Yeah, I totally understand. You can email like the info email, and get connected with you directly. I'm Jessica Ashcraft. I know you probably can't see the screen, but yeah, happy to try to
Yeah,
get
I
you in the
can't.
right place.
Okay, I'm sorry. Where should I go? And then go to the info.
Yeah, you should find an info.
Okay, refugee. Hang on. Sorry. Okay, what is it? Refugee?
Refugeewelcome.org.
Okay, thank you so much for your
Yeah.
help and for answering my question.
Yeah, of course, of course. Japhet, we do have a question in the chat. What are some examples of the locations and services respondents mentioned when they answered other? I guess that's for the key locations and the ongoing services.
So it's best to categorize them as other because there were many of them. But I also know that some people mention religious centers. We just intend to combine all those together to make space for a better clarification of the question. And I do want to say that this is a pilot. We also are very careful about the information that we want to put out there for from the report as well. Cynthia, okay. Do you have feedback about usage of the Welcome Works app? I don't know if this is a question for the webinar. If you could send me an email, that would be great as well, so I can follow through with you. Thank you. Are there other questions? Okay.
Yeah, another one. Are you able to share the survey tools you used? I'm interested in surveying clients in our network.
Absolutely. So, what we did was, let me just say very basically, what we did was to employ a partner that will work on collecting these reports, collecting the raw data for us. And then some of the tools we used were basic, they were basic qualitative research tools and quantitative research tools. So just aspect of coding, for instance, were part of that. I don't know if I can share any of those, but I'm happy to talk you through them if you have any particular question on those tools, Mara. I guess somebody asked about the actual link to the report. It's been added to the chat as well. Thank you.
Another question, Japhet. Have you found that refugees learn about community sponsorship in pre-arrival cultural orientation, or is it typically a surprise for them when they're assigned to co-sponsors post-arrival?
So part of the report reported that some of the refugees don't know the meaning of co-sponsorship, and we made sure that during the data elicitation phase, we explain what co-sponsorship is to them. Some of them, so they are varying, we have varying understanding of what co-sponsorship is. So we try to bring them up to speed by explaining to them what they actually went through. So it was very, very clear to them during the elicitation mode. This also tells us that more work needs to be done. For instance, in letting newcomers know why or what program they are currently ongoing so that they can understand very well as well. And then I see in the chat, let me see, sorry.
That's okay. Morgan has their hand raised. Morgan, Belle, do you want to ask your question?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Jessica. Hi, Jafet.
Hi.
My question was really similar to the last question that was asked. And I think, Jafet, you said during the elicitation phase that you talked to the refugees about co-sponsorship. I was wondering if you could provide more details on that, because I'm always really curious how RAs or groups across the country are interacting with the refugees when they first get here if they don't know about the program. So my RA specifically, our plan is to let the group come to the airport, but not necessarily have them interact with the family. So I'm just wondering how people are navigating that.
Thank you. That's a very good question. So what we did was, creating a report like this usually will be in phases. So the first thing we did, formulating questions, was to factor in that it is very possible that some refugee newcomers don't even know the definition of the program they are going to be going through. So what we did, like I mentioned earlier, was to make sure that there is proper understanding of why we're asking them this question. So that they won't be caught unawares of, for instance, what is co-sponsorship, what is community sponsorship. And if you go through the report very well, we provided definitions to terminologies, assuming also that some people reading this report may not even know what it means. So what we are trying to show through this report is to model to whosoever is interested in collecting refugee feedback, is to make sure that the people who are receiving these services understand very clearly what program they are going through, because it will make for clarity, and there will be clear expectation setting. Everybody would be aware of what they are getting and what it's expected of the program at the end of it. I hope I'm able to answer your question.
Kind of. I guess my question is, at what point are you having that conversation with the refugee families? Is it after, I guess inevitably it would have to be after they arrive, right? Or is there some way to give them this information before they arrive?
I would, so it depends on, so let me say it this way. If you, as the RA, are receiving these refugees, I would assume that at the point of them getting into the program, they know what they are going through. You explain to them, this is community sponsorship and this is what it means. And you could see from some of the reports, from some of the challenges we got, there were some blur lines around priority setting and goal setting. One of the things we found out was, if there's clear understanding of what the program is, there will not be this kind of, I don't know how to say it very clearly, there won't be this kind of blur around that line. So everybody will understand where it is. And I will give chance to Jessica Ashcraft to also point you in the right direction to answer this question very clearly. But that's my understanding for now.
Yeah, Morgan, I do understand your question. I think what I'm hearing is, in the current structure, the way people learn about community sponsorship is post-arrival. Like, especially, of course, if they are matched with a co-sponsor, maybe their relative is, who has resettled, so they may know about it before. But it is, I think what I'm hearing is there any mention of community sponsorship as a model in pre-arrival overseas cultural orientation? I think that's what I'm hearing. Is that a little bit in the right ballpark, Morgan?
Yeah, I think so, because I just hear a lot of stories
Yeah.
about like interactions at the airport, and I guess I just don't quite understand like how it's happening, or if we should be operating that way. But yeah, I guess that's my question. How much knowledge is now being given pre-arrival?
Okay.
Yeah,
Jessica, can you unmute yourself? I'm sorry, Jessica Ashcraft. I think I saw Jessica Chapman's hand raised.
Sure, no worries. Yeah, Jessica Chapman, you have your hand raised. Do you have something on this question?
Oh, thanks. And hi, everyone. Jessica Chapman, Director for Refugee Welcome Collective. Jessica, no, I think you're on the right track. I was just trying to better answer Morgan's question, that what we find as a national TA provider is that this is one area that resettlement agencies face a challenge with. How do you introduce this program to refugees that are going to participate in co-sponsorship? And so what we have focused on doing is trying to create materials that local offices can use to give to refugees as they arrive, even before. So what you're pointing out, yeah, maybe being at the airport the first time is not the best time to introduce, oh, these are your co-sponsors, because they won't know what that is, right? So as Jessica was saying, co-sponsorship is not introduced in pre-arrival training. Cultural orientation is offered pre-arrival. It covers many topics. It will cover and does cover already to some extent information about private sponsorship, but co-sponsorship, it does not. And so for local resettlement offices, then the question is, how do we introduce our clients to this program and let them know, why we have organized these volunteers to work so closely with them? So we have put in the chat a couple of resources that we've created to help with that. And just wanted to flag that it's a great question and something that many offices across the country are trying to work through and figure out.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, please go ahead.
I was just going to say, and of course, Morgan, if you ever want to troubleshoot and think through programmatic changes as to like when to introduce that, how many people to go to the airport, and what that welcome looks like, you can always request TA to talk through that. But it's a really good thing to point out. Absolutely. I want to get to two other questions in the chat. One of them is a follow-up on Morgan's, and the other is about fiscal year 24. So real quick, Japhet, are there plans for a fiscal year 24 survey to consider long-term integration of fiscal year 23 respondents? And would that plan expand the scope beyond 15 participants?
Good question. Absolutely. So our plan for FY24 is to have more refugees participate in this feedback project, because we know that a kind of information like this would help us chart a new path or further advance some of the programs we are on to. And like I said, it was a pilot, and I do want to acknowledge that on this call I saw some people who were really instrumental in connecting us with refugees that were part of this project, and I do want to appreciate you for that. So we'll be reaching out to some of you to link us up with refugees that we can talk to for expanding this project. So please, if you see our emails, our calls, please indulge us and link us up very quickly so we can have a robust understanding of what is going on as well. And also you can use the feedback survey, the QR code and the link to provide us further details as to how you can be of help in doing that for us in the coming year.
And the other question that was a follow-up on Morgan's question, did the survey find whether it might be beneficial to give families more of a choice whether they want to work with a co-sponsor team or not?
We did not ask that question, but we did ask them what they thought about our co-sponsorship as being a joint project of RAs and sponsors, and also as as only RA or only co-sponsors. And I remember that Jessica presented that none of them said it should be for only RAs. And then we had, I'm trying to look for okay, so that will be on slide 15, where we had the benefits for this is good welcoming. It has to be RA staff plus sponsor, and that's going to equal good welcoming. To have both RA staff and sponsors participate in this, we had 80%, only community sponsors, we had 20%. None of them said they want only RA to support in this. So that's really significant in this. Maybe that's a question we can consider for the next batch. So please, if you could put that in the next plan, that would be great as well.
Yeah, and Seth, we'll say from a technical assistance standpoint, consent is such an important part, obviously, of taking a trauma-informed approach and also protecting the newcomer's autonomy. So through TA have definitely worked with affiliates to consider what that consent process could look like, especially given that there may be language barriers, let alone a cultural barrier of what is a co-sponsor. There's not even necessarily a US understanding of that term, at least not a widespread one. So certainly could troubleshoot that with you if that's something that you're interested in, because it is so crucial to, again, taking a trauma-informed approach and also promoting newcomer autonomy. Looking at the chat, I don't see any other questions, so feel free to raise your hand or type any questions that you might still have in the chat to make sure that we can get to everyone. Great.
All right. I do want to reiterate that our website is up to date. You can check us out. We have many resources that will be useful for you in your work and in your welcoming work as well. So, and then you can schedule TA directly with us. And I see there's a link in the chat for you to do that. So we'll be on deck to help you through any navigation you need, definitely. So just hit us up and we'll be able to do that with you. I'll leave about 2 minutes for everyone to go back to the survey and fill it out. I can see we only have a handful of responses. So if you can kindly submit your feedback, that would be great as well. And if we don't have any other question, I'm happy to let us all go at the 15 minutes to the hour time. So thank you very much for attending this incredible session. And thanks to Jessica Ashcraft for co-presenting today with me. And thank you everyone for attending. And thank you so much for your questions and participating as well. And like I said, we'd like to hear from you and receive your feedback. So on behalf of the Refugee Welcome Collective, thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your day.